And now from the Multicultural Center, I have three wonderful students who are coming into Heidi's living room as well. So please introduce yourselves and go at it.
Hi, Heidi. My name is Mariah Lee Wright, and I'm a student advocate in the Women's Resource Center here at Sylvania. And my question for you today is, how much of your life experience is similar to what takes place in the life of Rachel's character in the book?
27%. maybe 27 and a quarter.
You figured out exactly?
Exactly, yes. It is a great question. I'm just joking, but I do get that question often. How much of your story is Rachel's story? How much of Rachel's story is your story? And I don't have a great answer for it, except to say that obviously what happened to Rachel didn't happen to me. Thank God, right? But the central struggle she deals with over identity, over being a girl growing up in a society that still makes it difficult for girls to grow up, thinking about themselves in a different way other than beauty and putting their value in that. Those kinds of struggles were very much my struggles. I remember thinking, why can't anyone see that what's most important about me is that I work really hard and I have these stories to tell. But what they wanted to know always was, you know, how did you get your hair so shiny? Or are those your real eyes? Those were the kinds of questions I got. And then beyond that, every other character is also me. Every struggle, every grief, all of the feeling, they're all my feelings too.
Thank you.
Hi, Heidi. My name is Steven, and I work at the Multicultural Center. You talked a little bit about this earlier, about your experiences in higher education, but I was also wondering what are some of your other experiences around your racial identity, ethnic identity in higher education?
One of the things I was really surprised at when I got to college was that I didn't necessarily find the exact position in the Black community that I wanted to have. I had this idea when I was growing up that the reason I wasn't connecting with the Black students who I knew, who were around me, was that they weren't oriented educationally in the same way I was. You know, they were good students, but I just really wanted to go on to the biggest, baddest school I could go to. And I thought, well, once I get there, the Black community will be everyone will be exactly like me, and I will find my place, and then I could be in the African American community. And I was shocked by the fact of class differences. I didn't realize that that would matter once I had gotten into such a great school. I thought, you know, I'm here. Obviously, I've achieved on the same level you have, but there was still this issue of class. I didn't have a history of doctors and lawyers in my family. You know, in fact, I'm the first person in my family ever to graduate from a 4-year college, and went on to get 2 master's degrees after that. But these guys came from doctors and lawyers and scientists and things like that. And so suddenly I had another way to be ashamed, that it wasn't just my cultural identity didn't fit, but suddenly my background didn't fit. I had been poor, and I worked in the cafeteria during college, and the other kids didn't necessarily do that. And so that was one of the defining experiences for me. I think the best thing is just getting older and then not caring about what other people think about you. I think that's my best message to the people who are younger and struggling, or if you're my age and struggling, that at some point you just have to give it up and stop being polite and just be who you are. It makes me a lot comfortable.
Thank you.
Hi, Heidi. My name is Carrie Wilborn, and I work at the Women's Resource Center here on campus. And I was kind of wondering, being a woman of mixed race myself and growing up in Northeast Portland myself, there's a lot of similarities between Rachel, your story, and mine growing up.
I didn't steal it, right? I mean,
I don't think so.
You can't get my royalty checks, no.
No. You kind of talked a little bit about this already, but I was wondering if you can go into a little bit more depth about your experiences receiving lateral racism from the African American community, as well as the white community and being caught between the racial identifications, cultures, and communities?
It's a great question, and it's something that I didn't know how to talk about except in fiction, because it's kind of the dirty laundry of the Black community that still, and I say we because I feel like I'm part of the African American community. I also feel like I'm part of the Danish community too. So if I say we a lot, it's because I think I'm part of all of you. I'm part of all of your communities and your lives. But in the Black community in particular, it's something you're not supposed to talk about, these ideas that we have of colorism and shadeism, and also, you know, it's a little bit of self-loathing, I think, ultimately, and it goes back to the days of slavery, and it makes sense, obviously, that when you've been an oppressed person, there's certainly a reason that you want to lash out and lash back. But there's hope, I tell you, because Ebony magazine, now I don't know if any of you read it, but I think grandmothers read it now, mostly. Ebony magazine, you wouldn't think would do a multiracial issue for their magazine, but in fact, this issue, May, that's out on newsstands now, there's a 12-page spread about multiracial identity and all of the different ways that Black people are actually saying, you know, we recognize this now. It's not going to divide our community anymore just by talking about the fact that we actually are a multiracial community. And so I think that's very exciting. But I talk about it better in the book. That's the great thing about writing, especially fiction. You can actually tell more truth in the stories than I could tell you here on stage today, telling you the nonfiction version of my answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if we have a little bit more time, we were wondering if we might be able to ask a couple more questions more specifically to your book.
Yes, please.
Yes?
That means they read it. That's great.
Yeah, we did. So we will start with people, this might be a spoiler, I'm not sure, or might be obvious by the title. Why did the character Rachel jump, and what is the symbolism behind this action?
Go like this, whoever you are. I love that question. It's hard for me to give a good answer to it, but I can tell you the background to writing the story was that I saw a newspaper article, and it's about a tragedy that happened, just like the one I describe in the book, and the girl survived. And I became obsessed with this story. I cut out every newspaper article I could find. I watched all the TV reports, and of course, in the typical American way, we become outraged for 2 days, and then the TV cameras go away, and we all forget about this tragedy. But I was obsessed with it. And I remember sitting down and thinking, I need to write this girl's story. This real girl survived. What does her survival look like? And so I sat down to write her story, and in my mind was the real girl, who in fact is still out there somewhere. She's out there. And I had this picture of her from the newspaper story, kind of an old, fuzzy school portrait, and I knew her name and I knew her age, and I tried to imagine what would happen to exactly that girl, and I just got terribly stuck. And then I thought, the reason that I'm obsessed with this story is the most important thing, and the reason I'm obsessed with this story is that it seems to have something to do with my own story, which was coming to Portland, Oregon at age 11, never having known anything about race, and then feeling like I fell from the sky into a racialized society and not knowing how to navigate that. And I imagined very much that Rachel would feel the same way, because obviously she's in a new place, and she's the new girl in the same way that I was the new girl. I'm dodging the other part of your question because I don't want to ruin it for you out there. Hi.
It's understandable. Thank you again.
This one is might have another spoiler, so close your ears. What do you think happened to Rachel and Brick after the book ended?
They went to go see a vampire movie. It's a good question. Very honestly, I don't know what happens to them next. That's why the book ends right there. And when my mom finally read the book, I didn't let her read my work all of those 12 years. She never got to read any of my work. But when I finally had an advanced reading copy, something that looked like a book, it had the cover on it, but it was a paperback version of it. And she said, the first thing she said was, I read it twice last night. I stayed up all night. I love it. It's amazing. You gotta love your mom for like supporting you that way. And then she said, so what happens next? When are you writing the sequel? And you know how we get exasperated with our parents? This is how I talked to her. I was like, Moa, you're so silly. Oh my gosh, there's no sequel. That's where the book ends. And so now people keep asking me, what happens next? I don't know, but I kind of want to know now. And if you guys have any ideas for me, you can write me at heidi@heididurdrow.com to let me know. Very honestly, I've started to take notes about what happens, not to Rachel necessarily, because she's such a complicated character. I'm not sure what happens to her. She probably goes to Stanford University, Columbia, and then Yale Law School. I imagine that's what she does. But I think more interesting to me would be to write about Brick. And so I've been taking notes on, it won't be my next book, but I think there's a book in me in the future writing the story of the lost years of Brick and also what happens to him next. Does he actually go off and achieve his goal that he sets off to do? But it's a great question.
Thank you.
My second question for you is, why did you choose to write your book in the format of many voices?
I didn't set out to do it that way at first. I really thought I was just going to write the story of Rachel in the first person, present tense, over the course of 300 pages. I have to tell you, it was exhausting to write that way, but it must be exhausting to read also, because you're right there all the time. And then at some point I realized that the character Rachel is terribly unreliable, because she not only lies to other people about what happens, but she also lies to herself. She fakes her diary entries, in fact. She's an unreliable narrator, and so I needed someone else as a counterpoint to tell a piece of the story that was happening. I think the first other character I brought in was the character Lerone, the mother's friend and employer, the piece that you heard earlier. And then after that, it became a much more organic process, and I thought, I could bring in another character here because it's in service of the story. And so that's how all the characters came about. Someone asked me yesterday, well, why didn't you give Grandma a chapter or two? She never gets to say anything. And I had to think about it for a minute because it never occurred to me that I should write Grandma, because it wasn't in service of what the ultimate question of the story is. And the ultimate question for me in the story is really, what happened on the rooftop? And there was no way that Grandma could answer that question.
Thank you.
Oh, man. Thank you, guys.